The Provoke Podcast, brought to you by Provoke Media and produced by the international broadcast specialist Marketeers.
Hi, I'm Diana Marzalek, and welcome to the Provoke Media Podcast. Today we are speaking with Jaimee Reggio, who leads U.S. healthcare for Golin, and as well as Golin's sister agency, Virgo Health. We're very happy to have you here, Jaimee.
So happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Good. I know there's healthcare. There is no shortage of things to discuss in healthcare. So we're going to today, though, discuss about a report that you led for Golin called Raising Rare Report. Maybe you can start us off by just giving us sort of a top line view of that, and then we'll go from there and get into the nitty gritty.
Yeah, I would be happy to. And again, thanks for the opportunity to talk about this research. The Raising Rare Report is a comprehensive study that examines the needs of caregivers and young people living with rare diseases. And it really explored and narrowed in on the transition from independence to adulthood for individuals living with rare disease. We focused on that transition period, their preparation levels for independent healthcare, and really wanted to understand sort of the support needs during this life stage. We surveyed 261 patients age 16 to 23 and 120 caregivers across 175 rare diseases to really understand what's happening during this critical stage.
And why this subject at this time? What was it, especially coming from a communication standpoint? What was it that you wanted to uncover here?
Yeah, it's a really great question. You know, we do a lot of work supporting companies that are investing in research and development to bring new therapies to market for people who live with rare disease. So it's a passion area for the Golin Health team. And, you know, as we support our clients and talk as a team about the rare disease category, you know, one thing that occurred to us is that as, you know, the medical advances have been coming, that more and more rare disease patients are actually reaching adulthood more than before. So we really wanted to dig into understanding what happens during that transition period when a young person is diagnosed as a child and then moves into adulthood and assumes kind of their care moving forward. And I think, you know, what we really wanted to understand was what would we find? Would there be new insights and opportunities for communicators in this space that we could bring to our clients?
Mm-hmm. So just for my own edification, when we talk about a rare disease, I understand, and there's a range of rare diseases, right? So
many rare diseases, yes.
Right. So, and of all sorts of, I don't want to use the word severity because everything is severe and has to be managed, but in terms of affecting people's day-to-day life. And I mean, what are we talking about in this group that we studied?
So we're talking about people who live with a condition that affects a very small number of people. So typically fewer than 200,000 individuals in the United States. In our work in rare disease, sometimes we're talking about patients who have never met anybody else who lives with the same condition that they face. Okay. So talk about isolating, talk about confusing, talk about concerns about finding information or lack of access to information and care, or that kind of peer support that we know as communicators is really important to provide to help somebody along their care journey. So this is a really special audience and one with unique needs.
It is a special audience, and it is definitely one with unique needs. I don't have to tell you that. Yeah. And we will get into the findings, but my big takeaway, not my big takeaway, but a big takeaway for me when I read some of your findings, looking at what this population of young to young adults, I imagine, needs and wants versus their caregivers, whether that's parents or whomever it is, it's not that different, right? The discrepancy is not that different from, you know, as a mom, what I want for my kid or expect, you know, right. It's some of the needs are unique, but the dynamics, are they unique?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think what's interesting, I think you're right. I think that there's a lot of parallels to chronic disease as well. That if a child were perhaps diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, which is not a rare disease in childhood, that some of the same challenges that we're seeing and dynamics that play out related to caregivers and patients are similar, right? I
Mhm.
think one of the things that I thought felt really interesting with this patient population is the discrepancy around treatment. The fact that 77% of the patients that we spoke to plan to change their treatment approach, but only 53% of their caregivers expected that happening. And I think that really signals, a fundamental communication breakdown about future intentions. Now, that's specific to rare disease, and I thought that that was one of the most interesting findings of the Raising Rare report.
But is that a communication breakdown between caregiver and patient, or is that a communication breakdown between I got to figure this out, the individuals with the healthcare providers or the companies? Are they basing their decision on different communications
Yeah.
with the providers?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question, and it is not an answer that we have from the research that we've done. I think we've scratched the surface here and have covered a lot of insights to bring to our clients and to the rare disease community, and a lot of new questions that have emerged. And I think I would only be kind of guessing what the answer is to that question truly.
Mhm.
What I'm excited about is the fact that we have uncovered a bunch of new insights and uncovered new questions that, as Golin Health, we're going to seek to answer in the next phase that we're planning right now in terms of raising rare and continued investment and research into this patient community.
So, what are some of the other big takeaways that you find particularly surprising or interesting?
Yeah, I think the readiness gap that revealed itself was really interesting as well. So, for the listeners, the Raising Rare report revealed that 98% versus 79% of patients versus caregivers felt that they were ready to assume independence of their healthcare needs. So, nearly every caregiver obviously worries that their loved one isn't prepared for independence, but the vast majority of patients who actually made it to that through that transition period really felt ready. And I think that might be suggesting that caregivers may be underestimating their loved one's capabilities, which does have implications for how we communicate about transition planning and supporting both the caregiver and the patient during this period.
And what kind of support is there? Obviously from the medical community, but also from the companies from a communication standpoint. What kind of special support is there, or is there lacking in this period of time when people are trying to establish their independence?
Yeah, I think what's really important, what I felt like as we looked at the research really stood out, is that it's really important that we are integrating mental health support into all of this kind of the communications that we create to support this patient population. This isn't mental health support isn't just an add-on, but should be part of the treatment plan. The research showed that 55% of those who successfully transitioned relied on it, but it's consistently overlooked. I think also it's really important that we think about developing separate but complementary resources for patients and caregivers, that this isn't a one-size-fits-all approach when it comes to talking about some of the challenges in this transition period. And then you brought up healthcare providers. I mean, they're a huge part of this transition and the care continuum for patients, but caregivers as well, and really helping to kind of facilitate those discussions during this time period and even leading up to the time period. We found that the research showed that both patients and caregivers trust this group most. That isn't really surprising. But they should be, healthcare providers really have an opportunity to kind of serve as mediators, not just clinicians, and helping both parties kind of guide this moment in time.
Well, you brought up the mediator component, and again, this could be any kid in school, right? Or
Yeah.
anybody preparing for a job. When you talk about caregivers and patients, it's
Yeah.
different circumstances. But um, why the discrepancy? Who is the decision maker at this point in life?
Yeah.
Why are they geared to that, or is that just part of the natural progression of people growing up and moving on and taking on their own responsibilities?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a natural part of the transition. I am like personally, I'm kind of in this phase right now with my daughter who just went to college.
Hmm.
It's completely different, but I'm in that in between phase of being a parent to her for 18 years and guiding all of the decisions and really being the primary person making big decisions for her, and now letting go and letting her make some of these decisions for herself in terms of her path and future and the direction she wants to take. Now, when I think about that related to rare disease and a parent or a caregiver who's caring for somebody with a rare disease, that becomes more complicated and way more complex. And I think, that transition period, it's not black or white, it's
Right.
both. And, once you get into that period where the child is nearing sort of adulthood and is then technically able to kind of guide their own treatment decisions, um, that's tricky as a parent. I feel that with my child who isn't sick and doesn't live with a
Right.
chronic disease or rare disease, and I think it's a critical time to kind of plan for, right? It's coming. So I think having those conversations before you get to the actual period of transition is really important.
And how do is there anything in terms of the evolution of whether it's how the companies are handling this, the healthcare providers or parents in terms of a generational sort of evolution of patients taking more charge of their own health, or is that really still kind of a family, parent, adult sort of thing?
It's a really interesting question. I love this question, actually. It's not anything we explored in the research, right? But I think you're raising a really good point, Diana. I mean, I'm thinking about social media and TikTok,
Mhm.
right? Specifically, the Raising Rare report did show, and this is not a surprise, right, that the patients living with a rare disease do look to their peers for support. Their peers are on social.
Mhm.
And I think about just sort of, where even my children get their information. TikTok is their main news source. Seeing information from influencers, from other, trusted parties that they follow online. Um, I think that is I don't, it's something to consider, right? As part of this transition, and where patients are looking for information, where adolescents are going to learn more and to empower themselves. They have more information at their fingertips than I ever did as a young adult, and that means they have a voice.
Right.
Truly, they can be asking questions. They know more than we ever did.
Right. And it also though goes back to that predicament that we see often with these things is that on one hand, these kids are able to reach out to people, like you say, they might not have ever met somebody with
Yeah.
their condition or disease, but yet how do the healthcare providers, the healthcare companies, the healthcare system make sure to get the right information to them?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that's the question of the moment, truly, just because of the age of misinformation, disinformation, that we see, especially about healthcare online.
Right. I mean,
Yeah.
I feel like this has raised so many interesting topics. it's laid the groundwork for what you said is the kind of the next steps. I mean,
Yeah.
what has this shown you that is the next step? What do we need to explore further, or where do we go from here with the information you garnered from this research?
Yeah, you know what I'm really excited about related to Raising Rare was the reaction from our clients and from the community and from others like you who report on these topics. And what I think is really going to be fun to do is to bring others into the next phase, others who live with rare disease to help evaluate what we found and take it to the next level. Ask those questions. What if we explored this a little bit further? Let's ask these questions next. And this being something that, a topic that Golin Health really ignited, but bringing others in to take it to that next level, to bring more information and insights to the community and to the clients that we work with, who are bringing new treatments to market.
And what are the impediments to communicating with people with rare disease? I mean, I'm assuming, and I know I'm not supposed to assume anything, but you don't have the blockbuster drug, right? This is not high cholesterol, right? These are small populations and young populations we're talking about. So there's got to be particular impediments that you work with all the time, just in terms of.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, because sometimes you're looking for a needle in a haystack, right? It starts with research and really understanding who is the patient population, where are they online? Where's advocacy engaging? Are there advocacy organizations stood up to support these rare disease communities? And sometimes there aren't. And then I think looking for just other non-traditional ways of finding our patients through healthcare professionals who treat them, centers of excellence that may have been established to support a specific rare disease. It's not, this isn't hypertension, cardiovascular disease that impacts the masses as we see, but really niche. And it really takes understanding the audience and really targeted channel planning to reach them effectively.
And of course, every rare disease is not the same rare disease. So
Correct.
we're talking about the group of these people with rare diseases, but you drill down, I mean, there's
Yeah,
countless rare diseases, correct? So
exactly.
it's
Exactly.
it's a tough one. Is there enough in the communications field, healthcare, paid attention to people with rare diseases? I mean, it's a small population. I don't want to say it gets lost in the shuffle, but there are bigger populations out there. I mean, how do we treat communications for rare diseases?
I think that's a really great question. What I think we're really excited about is just sort of seeing the amount of industry coming into this category to invest in these smaller populations and bringing much needed treatments to the communities. In some cases, the first and only, right? Where there has never been a treatment before and really, trailblazing in terms of addressing major unmet needs across rare disease. There are incredible advocacy organizations that are supporting the rare disease community all up, like NORD, Global Genes, to name a few, who are really serving as the voice of this patient community. And I think advocating both on the Hill for additional research investment and support for people with rare disease and to just give them voice. And that helps. All of that helps. And I think research like the Raising Rare report continues to give voice to this community and bring new insights and information around what the needs are so that we collectively can continue to, bring solutions to the table, address communication gaps, provide new information and resources, and think about different ways to engage and really address the needs.
And so we cannot end this conversation without asking, what does this mean for our communicator listeners? Where do they take this information? What do we do with this from here?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting to think about when you're working as a communicator in a rare disease, really thinking about this moment in time as part of the journey, right? When we engage with our clients, understanding the patient journey in a rare disease category it's complex. It's very complicated. It often takes several years to even get to a diagnosis. So understanding where this transition period fits in the patient journey and really taking a moment to understand what are the dynamics here, maybe integrating some questions as part of market research, as part of advisory board meetings that may be happening to dig into a specific rare disease in this transition period, and understanding where communications might be able to provide much needed mental health support and resources, transition materials and discussion guides, both between patient and caregiver, but also patient and HCP, and the three of them as well in the room. I just think like this is an area where we don't really talk about these major life transitions, and this is an area where I think communications can dig in and really add value as part of the bigger kind of marketing mix.
Excellent. Well, such an interesting topic, and I appreciate you studying it and discussing it with us. And we will wait for the next step and see where this goes.
Well, thank you, Diana, for the time. We're really thrilled to have had the opportunity to talk about the research. And if your listeners are interested, they can download the full Raising Rare report on golin.com.
Excellent. All right. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
You've been listening to the Provoke podcast, brought to you by Provoke Media and produced by the international broadcast specialist Marketeers.